When I think of Luis Figo, I think about him taking people on, exciting the crowd, you know, great crosses, and also, you know, a great goal scorer. The goals he scored were always wonderful goals.
Skill, imagination, leadership, courage. Luis Figo had it all.
He was the type of player who could win a game on his own.
At that time, he was one of the greatest players, I think, in the world.
A hero in his home country and to millions across Europe.
One of Figo's teammates once said to me, "Our tactics, give the ball to Luis."
He had an exemplary career. He was, and always will be, engraved in Portuguese football history.
Luis Figo was the captain of his country, winner of Europe's highest honours, and the subject of the most controversial transfer in modern football history. Few players move between the most bitter of rivals. Fewer still can cope with the pressure from all sides. But the summer of 2000 saw one such transfer, a move that shocked the football world.
It's like you throwing a grenade into the public, you know, because that, you know, it's very delicate situation with the Barca player going to Real Madrid, and he knew that also, but he decided still to do it.
Had it involved a lesser player, the transfer might have caused only a minor ripple.
It's highly charged, and it was exhilarating, it was frightening, it was, you know, exciting at the same time.
Because the player in question was Luis Figo, Barcelona's best player, the holder of the Ballon d'Or, and he signed for Barcelona's greatest rivals.
When he went to Real Madrid, he reached another dimension.
The age of the Galacticos had truly arrived, and Luis Figo was one of the first. Luis Figo was born in November 1972 in Almada, near the Portuguese capital Lisbon. He played for several local teams before impressing visiting scouts from Sporting Lisbon, who invited him to don the famous green and white jersey.
What really set him apart during his career was his work rate, his attitude, his commitment, his hunger, and his passion for the game.
The young winger blossomed at Sporting, progressing rapidly through the ranks. In 1990, still a teenager, he made his first team debut.
Figo was already a top player because of how he handled the ball, how incisive he was when he attacked, how he motivated his teammates, and the fans as well.
He was also able to make the team play better, to make other players play better than they usually could. With Figo on the pitch, the team was always stronger.
If he had been born in Brazil, he would have fitted into the Brazil team perfectly, because he had that skill in moving the ball, a great dribbler, and he knew how to look after the ball.
Figo won his first club championship in 1995, but when a proposed move to Italy fell through that summer, he was snapped up by the Catalan giants, Barcelona.
He had everything, you know, to be a great player. He had speed, he had great technical abilities, physically, not only his body, but also, you know, his endurance, you know, to play 90 minutes full speed.
He could do 1,000 different things. He could go on the outside, on the inside, he could pass the ball and go. He was very quick, very strong, and the truth is you could give him the ball and he would create something most of the time.
There's a very simple way of putting it, and that's what one of Figo's teammates once said to me, "Our tactics, give the ball to Luis."
Once in Barcelona, Figo wasted no time endearing himself to the fans, scoring 9 goals in his debut season. He quickly became the heartbeat of the side and as such was targeted by the opposition.
Fundamentally, the answer is that they weren't able to stop him, but also those that did try tended to try and do it by focusing on Figo, by putting two men on him, by being aware of the fact that Barcelona did so much through him that they felt that they could effectively pay the price of not having a player somewhere else on the pitch if it meant having two players closer to Luis Figo.
He was one of the most influenced players in the team. Of course, we had Rivaldo also, we had Luis Enrique, we had Guardiola. Those four, you know, were the most influenced players in our team at that moment.
He became close with a group of players that were part of the Barcelona youth team. With me, with Pep, with Sergi, with Guillermo. And he quickly adapted to living in Barcelona and also to the philosophy of the club.
The team excelled, as did Figo, running from deep, directly at and frequently past the opposition. The Portuguese terrified defences, often capping his runs with devastating displays of his own finishing.
It was an absolute nightmare to mark him, as he was so unpredictable. He would change direction quickly because he was so very strong, so quick. He was explosive and was able to leave players behind.
Guardiola likens him to Maradona, but he doesn't liken him to Maradona because of his footballing talent. He likens him to Maradona because of his attitude. And he talks about how Maradona always stands up and shouts when someone has to shout, that when the players need someone to lean on, they lean on Maradona, that when the team isn't playing well, Maradona says, right, I'm going to sort this out. This is what Maradona did, and this is what Figo does. You are Maradona. And I think that tells you quite a lot about how important Figo became.
Barcelona is a special club. It has a lot to do with feelings, to feel culé and to feel Catalan. And I think he settled very quickly, and he was part of the Catalan idiosyncrasy.
Luis Figo is not just a great player for Barcelona, but he's a very emblematic player. Very, very good friends, for example, with Pep Guardiola, good friends with Luis Enrique. He's been seen as a kind of the embodiment of the club, despite not being a Catalan.
Victory in the 1997 UEFA Cup Winners' Cup was followed by successive Spanish League titles in 1998 and 99. Figo was handed the captain's armband for his efforts, and in 2000 was named the Portuguese Footballer of the Season for a 6th consecutive year. Even more impressively, he won the prestigious Ballon d'Or. But controversy lay ahead. Despite having won the Champions League just a few months earlier, club president Lorenzo Sanz was defeated in the Real Madrid presidential elections by Florentino Pérez, whose campaign hinged on one promise: to bring Luis Figo to Real Madrid. Pérez delivered. Figo arrived for a fee of €61 million.
I will try my best to justify through my performances on the pitch the contracts I've signed with Real Madrid. I want to make myself worthy of representing the name of Real Madrid.
Big shock, the fact that we had a new president, the fact that we had a new player was nothing. It was nothing new to Real Madrid. We just won the Champions League. The fact that we then were going to bring in, you know, a player who was voted World Player of the Year was a great coup for Real Madrid. The fact that they got him from Barcelona was won over on them as such, and he was going to make our team better, so we were thrilled to bits.
So Figo comes into a very, very good side, and basically it's a very good side plus the world's best player. Can't fail. And the player who gets moved out of position for Figo is Steve McManaman, who eventually re-finds himself on the left-hand side of midfield in a slightly narrow role, and actually it works really well. In the first season, Luis Figo for Real Madrid is superb.
You know, his ability to cross the ball, his ability to take people on, cross the ball to Raúl, Morientes, whoever played up front, again, was secondary for him. He was a wonderful player, coming into arguably the greatest team around at that time because we just won the Champions League. So, you know, he fitted in quite comfortably.
In Catalonia, supporters and players were stunned.
You know, it's like you throwing a grenade into the public, you know, because that, you know, it's it's very delicate situation with the Barca player going to Real Madrid, and he knew that also, but he decided still to do it.
It was a great change. Luis had been with us for some years, so he knew what Barcelona meant, the fans, and the special nature of this club.
He becomes the embodiment from Barcelona's point of view of all that is wrong with Real Madrid and the way they go about things. He becomes the embodiment from Real Madrid's point of view of the fact that fundamentally Barcelona are a bunch of losers. That fundamentally the best player comes to us in the end.
It was a little bit shock for the club and also for our players, because you're not going that quick to the enemy, but he did, and at the end it's just a job also. And, maybe when you are a really Catalan player, you understand it maybe better.
One of the reasons why Barcelona fans are so angry and so aggressive and why it becomes so dramatic is because they loved him so much, because they trusted in him so much, because they believed that he represented them.
I think that amongst his teammates, his switch was not seen as a betrayal. Today in the world of football, everyone makes decisions. Sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes you don't.
Well, if it wasn't bad enough, the rivalry between Real Madrid and Barcelona, the fact that, we'd taken arguably their best player, strengthened our side and weakened the Barcelona side was another thing altogether. And it was highly charged, and it was exhilarating, it was frightening, it was, exciting at the same time.
He becomes the focal point of a hatred that's not just about him, but which his move has exacerbated, his move has tapped into, and he becomes both cause and consequence of the rivalry. And I think that's quite difficult for him to live with.
In October 2000, Figo's first return to the Camp Nou was a major news story. 100,000 people channeled their aggression towards one man. For once in El Clasico, the football and the result seemed inconsequential. Figo was even spared the responsibility of taking corners for fear of being hit by missiles.
My lasting memory of it really was of the slight look of bewilderment with Figo, that the idea that he couldn't believe that it was quite so bad, despite the early warnings, that former teammates were absolutely flying into him, even though they then embraced him after the game.
Many of the players experienced a lot with Luis during those years, and for them, that is what remains in their memories. Luis was a friend, and so the reaction of his teammates to say hi to him and to hug him, that wasn't premeditated, it was genuine, and it's just what happened at that moment.
Madrid's faith in Figo reaped rewards, however. He helped his side to the league title in his first season, and then received the prestigious FIFA World Player of the Year award.
When I think of Luis Figo, I think about him taking people on, exciting the crowd, great crosses, and also, a great goal scorer. The goals he scored were always wonderful goals.
His good form continued during his second season at Real. Alongside the latest Galactico, Zinedine Zidane, he made the transition from out-and-out winger to a more central role. The Portuguese became more involved in dictating the play for Real Madrid.
He was the difference, because if you gave him the ball in a dangerous area of the pitch, you knew it could end up in the back of the net.
I think during his years at Barcelona, the managers he had imposed a tactical system that limited his football. He had to adapt very precisely to what the managers asked of him. And when he went to Real Madrid, he reached another dimension. He had more freedom. His football was more expressive. He had more room to roam on the pitch.
He wanted to come inside and be involved, and of course he was brilliant enough that made sense. But the basic idea was, this is a really good team. We had Figo, he's basically a right winger, but he's so good that if he's got some freedom, let him come inside and do more.
Figo did just that, scoring 3 times in the Champions League as Real Madrid reached the 2002 final. Bayer Leverkusen were beaten 2-1 in Glasgow. And Figo was finally a European Cup winner. For all the euphoria surrounding Figo and Real Madrid, the competitive nature of El Clasico and the bitter rivalry between Spain's biggest clubs ensured it was not always plain sailing. Madrid and Figo returned to the Camp Nou in November 2002.
I don't think anybody had experienced a game of football like that, because in the end it was slightly farcical, as in the game was secondary, the game was spoilt. You know, he was our chief corner taker, so when he went over to take corners, you know, there might have been 4, 5, 6 stewards, armed guards, whatever, you know, telling the fans to stop throwing things, but it just came and it came and it came.
Every time he touched the ball, he was booed. I've never witnessed anything like it. Every time he touched the ball. And he's one of those players that always wants to have the ball. And the crowd continued to boo him. Normally a player gets jeered 2 or 3 times, but he was booed throughout the entire match.
I think in the end we went off the pitch while everything calmed down, and once that happens, the game's spoiled, the game's secondary.
The noise, you know, was so overwhelming. A head of a pig or something on the field throwing at him, and yeah, and he was a traitor. Every time he was on the ball, they whistled and they called him a traitor.
Well, I'll be 10 years, 12 years, 15 years on, we're still talking about, you know, what was thrown on the pitch, and it was, you know, if it happened now, it'd be, you know, talked about as an absolute disgrace, and it was then. And you know, it's to even think about what got thrown at him then even in a highly charged game is quite ridiculous, really.
Unfazed, Figo played a key role in Madrid's title win that season. His 10 goals and numerous assists were central to the Galacticos clinching another championship. 1 year later, he would captain his country as Portugal hosted Euro 2004.
He was a European champion when he was 16. He was a world champion when he was 20. He was one of the most important players in the national side.
At international level, Figo had been a young prodigy, the leader of Portugal's so-called golden generation. He won the FIFA Under-16 World Cup in 1989 and followed that triumph with the Under-20 title 2 years later.
I'm absolutely certain that his performance in that tournament helped Portugal to win the cup and contributed to him playing for 3 of the biggest clubs in Europe.
Having impressed at youth level, he made his full international debut aged just 18 and went on to amass 127 appearances for his country, scoring 32 goals along the way.
He was a player that showed his leadership skills in whatever team he played. In the most difficult situations, he was never scared to receive the ball.
Figo always set the standard and went beyond what was expected. He never played below the levels demanded by the game. He always played above. And because he did that, he had that moral and technical authority to bring the rest of the team up to his level.
It was Figo's performance at Euro 2000 that catapulted him to global fame. He played a central role as Portugal defeated England in the group stage, before eventually losing to France in the semi-final.
If the game required Figo's speed to be 120 kilometers per hour, he would play at 180. If the game demanded that he play at 200 kilometers an hour, he would play at 220. And so one of Figo's greatest qualities was to produce more than what the game demanded of him.
As hosts of Euro 2004, Portugal were one of the favourites. Figo was named captain, as a nation waited to see if the golden generation would finally mature as an international force.
Figo was a fantastic captain. He didn't talk much, but he spoke at the right moment. He was a leader because of his individual and moral qualities. And those that played alongside him knew he had the authority to demand that they give their best in every single game.
Figo and his teammates fell just short. Portugal suffered a shock defeat in the final at the hands of Greece, after which Figo retired from international football. But he soon reversed his decision and led his country to a World Cup semi-final in 2006. Portugal's best finish in 40 years.
He had an exemplary career. He was and always will be engraved in Portuguese football history.
At club level, Figo took up a new challenge in 2005, swapping Real Madrid for Inter Milan.
When I knew that Inter had signed Figo, everyone thought, wow, a huge star of the game. He's already won the Ballon d'Or. What's he going to be like? And it was just incredible how humble he was when he got here.
We had always admired him from afar, from when he was both at Real Madrid and at Barcelona. He was a superstar. And then he came here. And what really surprised us was his humility and how much he enjoyed working with a new team. He was always so keen to help out and to make sure that we stayed at the top.
He continued to showcase his talent, not least in the Champions League, and helped Inter win 4 consecutive league titles. The Nerazzurri dominated Italian football, and Figo continued to play his part.
Whenever he was facing a fullback, he would change direction at least 10 times. He would shape as if he was about to cross the ball, and then he would change direction again and again, until he chose the perfect moment to put the cross in for the striker to score.
I'm very happy and grateful and can only thank the game of football that I had the chance to play with Luis Figo and, more importantly, to have won important titles alongside him. And now he's a very good friend. Normally when a player retires, that's it. But in Figo's case, we're still close, and that's pretty cool.
On the day Inter Milan secured their 4th consecutive league title, Luis Figo announced his retirement from football. It was a fitting finale for a true great.
Figo is part of the highest sphere in football. With Pelé, Maradona, Eusebio, he's a player that reached the very top in world football.
He could literally play anywhere he wanted to and be a star.
Fast, he was strong, he was intelligent. From my point of view, what you like, you know, he got everything.
It was great to see how he behaved and how he was the first to set the standard and lead by example, with his work on and off the pitch.
He fully deserves to be named or remembered as one of the best in history because he really was incredible. He was just a fantastic player.
He fought for every ball. He was extremely fit, extremely strong, very quick. He would run at people. He would never ever hide.
Average footballers don't win World Player of the Year awards, Ballon d'Ors. Only superstars win those type of trophies, and Luis is certainly one of them.